Yesterday I shared my drops from the Mirrored Jewels event, and some people asked about the build I used while clearing the monsters. Actually that's the Explode All build with just a few changes, but since it's been a while since I shared that video, I will explain and show the slightly updated version of the setup in this one. But before we start, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. As I always do in my build videos, I will start with the skills I'm using. First, we have Corpse Explosion, which is one of the main damage sources of the build. We have two different essences that affect this skill. Shoulders essences make the skill work against feared enemies, which is quite important. Basically, it explodes the fear of target enemies, and if there are corpses around, they explode, dealing damage. So, the damage output from this skill is really high, and on top of that we are using a main hand essence that increases the damage of the skill by 19%. Next we have Command Skeletons. These are important because you can explode them and create a corpse whenever you need to use your explosion skill thanks to the head essence. So this is a must-have essence. Other than that we have an offhand that decreases the time required to raise new skeletal champions. And after that we have Bone Armor. There are different versions of this build using Corpse Lance, Grim Sight or Bone Spirits. But in this one, we are going to use Bone Armor with a chest essence. Thanks to this essence, Bone Armor instead summons 3 bone spikes that orbit you for 10 seconds and deal damage to any enemies they strike. Our last skill is Wraith Form, and we are still using the recently nerfed teleport version of it. Even after the nerf, it gets the job done. We are using a Pants essence to get this fear and teleport effect. This essence leaves fear on nearby enemies as well, so we can trigger our corpse explosion right after our teleport, even without any corpses. This is the key skill and the essence of this build. Finally, we are using Soulfire as our primary attack, and we are using an offhand essence with it, which gives Soulfire a 25% chance to explode on hit, dealing damage to nearby enemies and causing them to burn. Now let's take a look at the set items, and after that we will check out the legendary item essences. You can make this build work with many different set item combinations, but I will share what I use right now. I have 4 pieces of Banquet, 2 pieces of Isatar, and 2 pieces of V2s. But like I said, this is not the only option. You can try out different setups and make them work, but I would recommend keeping 2 pieces of V2s to increase the duration of Bone Armor, and at least 2 pieces of Isatar to gain some extra movement speed. Other than that, make sure to choose the Protector base bonus with Shepherd's Burden Remnant on your Warband to get some more movement speed, because increased size also increases your movement speed. This is quite important since Necromancer can feel quite slow considering we only have 1 movement skill with this build. Now let me show you the legendary items one by one. For the headpiece we have Coals for Eyes. Command Skeletons now causes your skeletal champions to explode at their destination, damaging all nearby enemies. For the chest we have Flickering Warmth. Bone Armor instead summons 3 bone spikes that orbit you and damage any enemies they strike. For the shoulders we are using Tremulous Boil. Corpse Explosion now also detonates the fear of targeted enemies, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. For the pant we have Strange Sojourn. Wraith Form now quickly transports you to your target. Upon arrival you deal damage and fear all nearby enemies. And for the main hand we have Pierce Hammer. Command Skeletons damage increased by 19%. For the offhand we are using Spite Fetor. Soulfire now has a 25% chance to explode on hit, dealing damage to nearby enemies and causing them to burn. And for the additional main hand we have Clotburst. Corpse Explosion damage increased by 19%. Lastly, for the additional offhand we have the Prong. Decreases time required to raise new skeletal champions by 57%. And I think that's all I can say about the build. We talked about the skills, set, and legendary items. Since this is a farm build, you should use Treasure Hunter while using it if you need scrap and dust. However, if you already have maxed out gear level, you can try out Warden for extra increased size, which means extra movement speed on top of everything you've got. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comment section. Thanks for listening and take care.